than not being able to be heard. So anyway, thank you so much for inviting me to into your families and into your living rooms. I've been into so many houses. It's just been wonderful. But I haven't been to everybody's, and I apologize for that. So my interest in Inlet is that my husband and I bought the old Lakeman house in 2005, and I bumped into Jennifer Blakeman, who said, "You're living in my grandparents' house." And I said, when I'm done with my other research, thank you, Jennifer, I'm going to dig into these families. So the way I've organized tonight is first I'm looking at the pioneers, but not all of them, only a handful of the families. Then I have found that the school is so central to our community here that I'm going to spend at least 10 minutes on the school. And we have a number of pictures from the school. And a lot of you will be able to maybe even recognize yourself in the school pictures. Then I'm going to move on just a little bit to the Inlet girls go to Old Forge High School. So they've been a lot of fun to talk with. And then I'm going to go on to a couple of the Inlet businesses, just a few that women were involved with. This program is for men and women, but I only talk to women. I have all the information, you know. And then I'm going to go on and highlight about 10 of the women that I did get a chance to interview. So I have talked with 15 women, but there's so many more to interview. And if you're not one that I've been to your home yet or have called you, I apologize, but I'll be there. So let's start with, and I'm not great with moving this, so. Of course, Charlie just mentioned Kirsch, and we can't do anything without talking about Letty Kirsch. So Letty came to, I'm going to pop in with my little summaries or my analyses in between these. And one of the big ones is that most of the women who came to form the families were not born in Inlet. They had grandparents, they vacationed in Inlet, they fell in love with Inlet and came back. Letty's grandfather was Frank Tiffany. Letty was not born in Inlet. Her mother was. So she was not somebody that was one of our, whatever the word native means, but Letty came back here because she vacationed here so much. And Letty became a town historian. She wrote 2 books about Inlet, one about the school, so we really can't start without talking. She was born in Watertown, actually, and I have a slide. First I'm going to show you her. How did that work? Okay, that's Letty. Maybe some of you might recognize her. I interviewed her about 4 months before she died. She died in, I believe, February of 23. And she was not looking quite this healthy then. So Letty, again, there's nothing worse than a PowerPoint that someone reads, and most of you can't see it, but it's to help me out. So I'm just glancing at it a little bit because what I'm going to do is quote from the PowerPoint and talk about what she told me as her feelings about Inlet. A lot of the stuff, if I go through all of it, we'll be here all night. So I want to just say the very last thing that I've always been drawn to the beauty of the Adirondacks, and I could not think of a more perfect place to spend my later years. And Letty did not come here to live until 1971, and that's when she came to teach school, and she and her husband were living in Massachusetts. So she raised her kids there and then came here where she was in love with us. Now, I'm going to go back for a minute to show you. These are the pioneers that I'm going to touch on. So the first one is Letty, and that's Tiffany. You all have heard of Frank Tiffany, and you've all heard of Lansing Tiffany, who was a very famous founder. And Kirsch is Letty's husband, and then the first Letty, and then Haynes is the Letty with a Y. It's very confusing because the first Letty is I-E and the next one is Y. Our Letty is Y, and she's Letty Haynes. O'Hara, we're going to move into O'Hara a little later because the way this is going to move is we're going to start here and we're going to end with O'Hara, Margie, and Bruce, because Bruce is the grandson to Charles O'Hara, who was the one that owned the Arrowhead. So we're coming back full circle. Blakeman, of course, we've got Janet, who's sitting right here. Janet, why don't you wave?
Hello.
And Jennifer is with Janet today. And again, the big reason I started all this is because of the Blakemans. I know Adele is here. I don't know if Barb is here.
She is not.
Hi, Barb. Hi, Adele. And the Murdochs, of course. Can't talk about Inlet without talking about the Murdochs. And the Manili, here's Joanne. Raise your hand, Joanne, and Brenda. And unfortunately, fortunately, but I just met them yesterday, so their photos didn't come through on my computer this morning. But here they are in life, and you know them as real pioneers of the town. So now I'll go forward. We did Letty, and now we're going to go to Katie Blakeman. Now I discovered that Katie Blakeman inherited the deed to our house very early. We're not quite sure why she inherited it, but she did, and then she, what's the word, deeded it to her husband, and then it was like, not sure where it was for a couple of decades, and then it moved on to her children. So the Blakemans' claim to fame, one of them was the Jack and Jill shop, and so Jennifer tells me that she and her sister Marcia, I know it's true, worked in the Jack and Jill shop, which was foundational to their background, and I understand it was a very friendly place for kids to go because the Blakemans allowed them to read some of those comic books without purchasing them. That was a real friendly thing to do. I'm going to come back to the Blakemans because I have a few more notes about them. But Janet married George. Let me see if I have a better. I'm going to go forward with a better picture, even though we have. So this is Janet and Marcia first, then Janet in the middle, and then Jennifer. And this is 2007. They sent me this picture. So this is, I don't have any old pictures of them. So Janet married George Ramsey Blakeman. And for those of you who wonder about, there's Abner Blakeman, then there's George Abner Blakeman, and then there's George Ramsey Blakeman. And the Manili girls told me that one of them was called Junior. Was that your husband? Was that Junior, or was it the grandfather? No. So you married Junior, yes, right? Yes. And yes. The quote I love about Janet is that she came to Inlet. She wasn't born here either. And she was already single for 30 years. Tell me if I'm wrong. And she said she learned how to organize her life. She learned how to live alone. And when she met Junior, she knew she was ready to get married. So she married Junior Blakeman. That's your quote. When I met him late in life, I knew it was time. That's what she tells me. So she still owns a home in Eagle Bay. And Jennifer lives over on Uncas Road. She and Steve came in they retired there. So now we're going to go through a couple of pictures about. So here they are at a recent wedding last summer. Again, Jennifer, Janet, and Marcia. And I just read all that. So now I do not know anybody that's in. Hey Adele, do you know any of these people? Charlie just sent me this. Charlie, you want to quickly?
This is a Murdoch family reunion. Now this is Gerald Kenwell, who married a daughter of this gentleman, Alan Chase, and I forget his wife's name. I'm still working on them.
Okay.
And the rest of these are all parts of the Murdoch clan.
All right. This is this is a Murdoch house. It's again, Adele will help me out here. They're all up on Murdoch Mountain, yes? Is this house?
Most of them are.
Most of them are, okay. And these are her early great aunts, correct?
Yes.
Ina, and your son is Madison, named for this uncle,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Yes, very nice. And Guy's one of your uncles, and Una. And this is about 1906. This is when the road right in front of the Murdoch home / mountain, 1913, when it was still pretty muddy. This is Barb's house, Grandma Murdoch's, Murdoch Mountain outside of Barb's house. Now we're going to move to the school. This did not close until it did not close in 23. It closed in 21. So I have a lot of school pictures. And this one is from the mid-40s. I know for sure that Jackie Berth, who's in our slideshow, and Don Bird are both of those pictures. And Don is, I'm going to walk right over here and show you. Yesterday the Maneelys told me, this is cute little Don. Do you remember him then, Gene? And now you told me Jackie. Do you remember where Jackie Berth was, Brenda? Which one was Jackie? Do you remember? Okay. Well, anyway, so this is the school in the 40s. This is the school a little earlier. I would love to know who this is. Does anyone know who this little fella is? Well, we can't tell that. And my stories about the school are not going to be quite yet, because this is Sue Beck. Her first year teaching kindergarten in 1969. Now wait, in the left corner is is Reggie Chambers. It's the only old picture I could get of Reggie, so she was teaching. So 4 of the women that I've really concentrated on are Jean, who was early on, she came in 71 along with Letty within like 6 months of Letty. Jean stayed longer though. Letty only stayed 20 years, and I think you stayed 27 years, right? So I'm going to tell one Jean Bird story that's told in Letty's book. Jean was very good, even though she was a woman, at handling these tall 7th grade and 6th grade boys who, believe it or not, were not well behaved. So there's a wonderful story of a boy who will go unnamed that they were having so much trouble with him. So during lunch one day, and I think Sue Beck was in the building, and I think Reggie was in the building, Letty was in the building, and Jean was in the building. They called his father, again, will remain unnamed. They called his father into the building and said, "We are having so much trouble with your son." So my understanding is the father punched him and knocked him out cold on the floor. Oh my God. You can tell me if it, Gee,
Well, I said, "You're never coming here again. I don't care what he does." But to make him behave, he had a snowmobile. And I said, "Have him bring his snowmobile keys to school every day, hand him over. If he behaves, he gets them at the end of the day. If not, he doesn't get them."
So then there was another story about the school board who thought, this is such a cushy job. These women just hung out and babysat for our kids all day long. They shouldn't get paid anything. And they certainly should not have any benefits. So one time, an unnamed teacher went in and asked for a little bit more money. I'm going to say she was making $7,800, and she went in and asked for a little bit more. And they said, "We're so annoyed you asked us for more that we're going to lower your pay, and you go home and stop complaining." Another story I heard was that they said these kids would behave better if there were men as teachers, which that didn't last so long, because the men, number one, didn't want to make such low salaries, and number two, the men didn't do as good a job at disciplining the kids, from what I understand. This is all just myth. But these are wonderful stories that I know that Adele is the unique person in our group here, because Adele was not born in Inlet, but she was born in Florida and raised in Inlet. She came here as a very young baby. And she not only was raised here, she stayed and stayed. She raised her 4 children here, and she now has her professional life here. And she said that she adored Mrs. Bird and Mrs. Haynes. And here's Barb. Hi, Barb. We happen to be talking about you right this minute.
The timing was
Barb, I'd leave if I was you.
This is the reunion. I guess a lot of you are probably in this picture. And later, if we want to pull this up, this is when the 100th anniversary. This would have been in 2006 when the school was 100 years old. And again, every single person I interviewed, I could go on and on and on, has wonderful quotes about the teachers and the school and how unique it was. And you know, our kids were really smart. They went up to Old Forge and they showed them what was smart. I mean, they really had a wonderful background at the school. And it's, I mean, it had to close, but it's really tragic, it did. Now, the Inlet girls. Okay, we have 4 young ladies, and there were a whole lot more than this. So when I first talked to, you may not know Jackie Berth very well because she was down up on 6th Lake. And Grace Rosati, where's Grace? What? Grace? Raise your hand. No, Grace said to me last summer, you've got to talk to Jackie. Because Jackie went to Old Forge High School, and Jackie lives in Arizona now, but she really want to talk with you. So Jackie said to me, they called us the Inlet girls. Well, then I talked to Margie O'Hara, who said, I don't think it was a complimentary thing. Those Inlet girls. So the Inlet girls, first off, you know what girls are like today in high school. You can imagine what it was like to leave Inlet and take that 10, it wasn't just a 10-mile bus ride, because some of the kids would come in from Limekiln, some would come in from Racket. They would stop at what's now the gas station, get one bus that far, another bus further on. Our dear friend Barb Murdoch was one of the drivers, but a little bit later than this. And Sue Beck tells a wonderful story about the Sue Harwood. Sue was Harwood then. The freezing bus rides. And she said they would sing, turn on the heat, Pete! Turn on the heat, Pete! Turn on the heat, Pete! When he was, what was his last name, do you know? Khalil. Right. So we have Margie Hodel, Jackie Berth, Brenda Maneely, and Sue Harwood, all hover around the same age. We won't name their age, but you would never believe their age. So I went into Old Forge to look at the yearbooks. So let's look at, oops, this is Margie, and I believe it's 59, and she, and here's Jackie, whoops, sorry. There's Jackie Berth, became Colquitt, and they lived here for quite a long time. I'm going to come back to highlighting each of these girls. Here's Sue back. And someone told me that you just can't say Sue without saying Perky Sue. So, and Adele is a little bit later, but I lucked out by getting her yearbook picture as well, because she just happened to have it at her desk the other day. Isn't she cute? So, when the girls went, they really dug into the Old Forge. They did not get bothered by the fact that they were the Inlet girls. They were the Inlet girls. So Jackie is one of the girls. This is the JV cheerleaders. Look how, when you think of cheerleaders today, what do they wear? Nothing!
What's wrong with that?
Here is this is the junior varsity, I'm sorry. And this is Sue. Sue, are you one in? Do you remember which person you are there? It's Harwood, right in the middle. The perky one. So not only were our kids cheerleaders, they were in the chorus. And they were all in the chorus. So I have Margie Hodel, who's up at 4B, over the 4th row over, next to her good buddy Jackie Berth. Then the very last is that's where Jackie is, and then Eddie Murdoch. Can you find him, Barb, do you think? Did you know he was in the chorus? I know when I said to somebody, all those kids were in the chorus. And I mean, Inlet really, you were all in the chorus, right? So I probably missed a lot of you. And this was only from 1 year. So now the businesses, I really, a lot of you are involved in business. And the whole core, besides family, the whole concept of figuring out how to make a living is a killer up here. And you know, I hear it in the winter, especially in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s. I mean, it was really, really tough. So many families left during the winter years, got work, like the Murdochs went to Florida. They got work in Florida, had their kids there, and came back. You made your ends meet the best you could. But a lot of people did have businesses. I'm only highlighting two of them because I'm, highlighting women here today. So one of them is, and this was along with her husband, Jean let Don be involved with this business as well. So along, this picture is adorable. It was hanging on a refrigerator. And I said, I've just got to have that picture. We cut out the dentist. Who was the dentist?
Joe Rentrona.
So we cut the dentist out of the picture. And I think it was like the 1990s, and it was Bird's Seaplane Service. I'm going to come back and give a few highlights when I highlight Jean's life. But this, of course, was just so central to our community, and as were the Birds, as they are still. Jean has Flybird on her license plate. You can always know who she is.
That's how I find a car.
We just better not park in front of any bad place, right? This was very, very important to our community. And again, Jean was not flying airplanes, but she definitely was supportive of all of this. I'll come back to the Birds. Now, this is a business. Sue Beck said that one of the things she's most proud of is she, remind me your partner's name.
Joan Payne.
Joan Payne.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Evidently, somebody one day said to them, Inlet will be nothing at all until it has enchanted forest. And they're like, what? We are the enchanted forest. So Sue and Joan went on to prove that they were. And they began a business called the Adirondack Discovery. And I wanted to highlight this here because I think it demonstrates, Sue was a full-time teacher when she did this. Sue did not make money doing this. This was the way women were able to jump into their community and say, we're going to show you how to make this a better community. And we've got these ideas, and we've got this up in Lake Placid, we've got this over Pasico, we've got all these places all over. We're going to connect with you mostly during the summer. And there's one picture of Sue. Now here's Sue. Who's to the right of you? Is that, do you know Sue, who it is? I know Joan is to her left, Joan Payne to
That
the
was
left.
just one of the, his name was Phil Drake, he was one of our members and wonderful person.
So this is the Adirondack Discovery, hiked up Black Bear Mountain in the late 70s. And again, I just said Joan is in plaid and Sue's to her right. But again, just the vibrancy and the effort in making people love who we were was just so perfectly personified by this. So now we have another, this is not the name of the book, there wasn't a book there, but I couldn't find Adirondack Reader in there. So we know that Reggie Chambers started a phenomenal business in 2001. All what she was teaching, not that she had, spare time. And this was something that we all, it unified us. It brought people into the town, rainy days, sunny days. It was such a creative way to encourage people to come into the area and to read. Now, she's not gonna like, well, this is the picture she gave me. So this is the picture Reggie liked. The next one she won't like so much. You know, and while we're talking about Reggie pictures, this is a picture from Reggie teaching at the Inlet School that I'm gonna pass
Yeah, we
around.
can pass it
With
around.
her permission, okay. And that's not now, this is later. But, so Reggie started this wonderful business, and then she, at the very beginning of her business, she just brought in her own coffee maker and had coffee for free. But then, other people started selling coffee, she didn't, for like $4 a cup, so she started having coffee. So she had, and then she was selling many different kinds of things, like, I'll call them tchotchkes, but it was more than that. She had local photographs and lots of things. Again, taking something little and creatively making it big because she knew what we would love. And it was just a beautiful thing. I'm going to come back to Reggie. We're not done with her. So, this is Inlet today. I'm going to highlight a few of these folks. So, Barb Murdoch, Barb Paynes Murdoch. It's Payne. I'm sorry, it's not Paynes, it's Payne. So, I could never get this all completely 100%. Except I know that her mother was Peggy Payne. And her mother, did your mother not drive? Yes. A lot of people have said to me, we remember Mrs. Payne that drove the bus. And some of you might have seen her with very short, very curly hair. And she had this quiet way about her, but the kids knew she meant business. And she was really, in the heritage of the family, a mother figure to them. When I was only looking at all the women as mothers, and I started early with Barb, I was thinking of Barb as a mother to the community. I mean, you can have your own biological kids, but you get on that bus in the morning, and it's at least 10 miles, and you know, you forget your boots, you forget your mittens, you forget your lunch. Peggy would have been helping you out, and Barb was helping you out. So Barb is being the daughter to Ted and Peggy.
Can I mention something about Peggy?
Of
I believe
course.
Peggy was my den mother when I was a little Cub
Oh
Scout.
my gosh.
I remember her and Ted awarding us our little trophies at the, the wolf and the bear and the moose. And those are some wonderful memories.
Yeah. It's just fabulous, right? So Barb was married to Eddie Murdoch, who tragically died in 2008. So I'm going to pause here because I want to talk about widows. We got too many widows in this town. We have a lot of widows that spent very modest lives with their husbands for a long time and took a long time at building special houses. Jean Bird is a bit of an example there, although Don died 9 years after they moved into their new house. And being a widow is always difficult, of course, that's very glib. But being a widow in Inlet is probably a little less horrible. Number one, you have this community. You have this stuff in you, this resiliency that just gets you going and gets you up in the morning and keeps you going and gets you in that car that says Flybird or whatever it does. And people are widows for a long time. I mean, we all know Barb and we know she's a widow and we don't say, oh wow, how are you feeling? I mean, but there's so many others, so many. I think like between when my husband and I moved in 2005, it seemed like between 2010 and even 20, there were so many men that died. I mean, I know there's a lot of women who are dying as well, but it's just a tribute to us that, you know, we kind of wrap our arms, we don't do it physically, but we kind of wrap our arms around people who've lost their partners. And it isn't a horrible, horrible place to come back to. So, speaking of tragedies, Barb lost her son Dan in 2018. And again, we tried to wrap our arms around her and Adele, and it's tough. And there's loss, loss, loss. And we try to rise above it. Barb was a bus driver for 35 years. She advocated for other drivers. There was no union, and she formed a union, CSEA. She was the president for a while. So I thought that this quote was only from when Barb was driving buses, but evidently Barb was the beach bitch all the time. Because down at the beach, or if she was driving the bus or whatever, she was the beach bitch. Love it. Here's her quote. "The kids in town call me the beach bitch, because I kept things in order there and on my buses." Another thing Barb told me that I think you can all resonate with. If an Adirondack woman says she's going to do something, she'll do it well and she'll do it forever. And the last thing Barb told me is what keeps me in Inlet is the community, the mountains, and the sense of home. So all this is written. I'm going to buzz through it and go on to Adele. These are not in any order of age because Adele is our baby. As I said before, you all know where to find Adele. Unfortunately, we can always find Adele unless it's Sunday and Monday. And even that, she's on email constantly. As I said before, she and Dan were both born in Florida, daughter to Barb and Eddie Murdoch. And I love when I said to Adele, can you get this straight, how your mom was marrying a Murdoch that was like the wrong age. And she said, well, you have to understand, we all were neighbors, and the age difference, somebody was babysitting for somebody else, and that's how they all met, right? It's a wonderful relationship. So, again, I mentioned before, Barb was raised in Inlet, went to school in Inlet, Old Forge, raised 4 kids here as her professional life here. One of the quotes from Adele is that here in Inlet, we experience family closeness, loss, hard work, community, and resilience. With a network to support it all, I'd never leave. We're not letting you leave. I don't think you're going to leave. But we don't want you to leave your job either because, yes, I think it was Reggie who said you are the core of our community. You are core. Oops. Okay, here's Sue, and I think you're standing on your front porch looking over into the lake, right? And that's the beautiful house that she and Dave built. There's another little tradition here of living in trailers for a while, or living in trailers, making your trailer your permanent home. I've been to a lot of them, they're beautiful. And Sue and Dave lived in a trailer where they were building their house. They're right across the street from the launch. I guess probably a lot of you know where that is. But the view, what a view, guys. You guys chose a perfect view because you can see everything. There's no trees, nothing's in the way. It's lovely. So she was daughter to Irene and Bob Harwood. And Bob, as you probably know, just died a year ago, right, Sue?
Yes.
And you had a tribute to him in May, right? Yes. So he was a real pillar of the community. Also flew, didn't he?
Yes.
Yes, he also flew planes. So she's married to Dave Beck, who's sitting right next to her. And she taught at Inlet and Old Forge schools, both of those Old Forge schools, both of those schools. She did not leave Inlet because she did not love it, but Old Forge paid a little bit more. So she was a reading specialist, and she